Hey, we are back at the World Fair for opening day, week 2 Tuesday.
We're getting there. We're almost a week and a half in.
I know. We've managed to stay. One little hiccup on the live.
Yeah, well, that's the internet for you.
We fixed it.
We did.
Yeah. Awesome. So I've been like pre-gaming and getting ready for this show for the last month, Jason?
Yeah.
Because we're going to drop some diagnostic truth bombs, as I like to call them. And the purpose of this show is, one, we're going to talk about scanning, calibrations, what's new on the new cars, the 2020s, the 2021s. We're also going to talk about tooling, hardware, software, equipment, the things that you have to have, and we're going to answer any questions that you guys have. If you think you want to do in-house calibrations and diagnostics, if somebody's been coming by with a sales system and you think, hey, we could do this in-house, today is your day to ask all the questions you want from Jake. There's no doubt you're probably you are our industry leader in this topic. We rely on you, we trust on you, and that's why you're here. So walk us through it, man. We're ready.
Well, it starts off with understanding our business, right? So, the aftermarket tools were built for a business. They were built for the mechanical sector, right? Much bigger than us. And, one of the things that we see is that in the mechanical side, the concern is known. A customer complains about something very specific. The cars are 8 to 10 years old, right? So it's just such a different model than what we do. So you guys have been in the industry a long time. I challenge you. Out of 4,500 asTech shops, how many 2020 models do you think we've connected to since they've been out? What do you think that number
of vehicles?
Price
is right going on.
Yeah, Price is Right.
Do we get to? Are we against each other? Or are we a team?
You guys can decide. You can decide.
Okay.
What do you think? What do you think that number is?
So there's 40.
If you have a number that you're thinking in the comments, what do you think it is? Put it in the comments.
At least every shop's probably done at least 3 or 4.
Okay, so take your time, but hurry up.
15, 20 grand. 15, 20. We're gonna say 17,388 is what I'm going with.
So 17,000 cars, roughly.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So the real number is 205,000 cars.
Okay.
205,000, right?
We were using a photo estimate system for our
You've connected to over 200,000 2020s.
models. Yeah. So what do you think 2021?
Just in the shops that asTech works with. So
right.
that's not the
just
industry at the
4,500
large.
shops.
That's just 4,500 shops.
Yeah. So there you go. There's a car that's still in its first year of life, right? And I get the same reaction from OEMs, by the way, because the commercial's still out, right?
Right.
It's a new product for them. They can't believe that it's been 1 year.
There's a special at the dealership. I can go pick one up.
There's a financing special, right? And they can't believe in the first year of life that it's already been in an accident. But that is our business. We're working on the newest cars in the worst shape. So 2021, are we in 2021 yet?
No, we're not there.
Okay, cool. So are any of the 21 cars out yet?
Yeah, I just got one. I'm pretty proud of it.
So how many
weeks before hers is in the
based on how long they've been out, out of 4,500 shops, how many 2021s have I connected to?
100?
A few hundred, yeah.
Few hundred? Yeah. So the real number is 1,531. So that's something that's growing by the day. Last time I checked, it was like last week, we were at 700 cars. So you can see where
so just to be clear, these are individual VIN numbers. It's not like you connected to the same VIN 10 times during the repair.
These are individual VIN
individual VINs.
Yep. So that's something that it shows you
I was
that
trying to save our number, Jason.
Yeah, right. That just shows you our clients are working on the newest cars. And so asTech had to take a very difficult and tough decision to not only use the factory software, but the factory hardware as well. Yeah. So as OEMs start putting security measures in the car, they don't really tell everybody. They don't send out a bulletin. You don't get a memo or a fax.
They don't tell us when they change the headlights.
Right.
I mean, much less that, right?
So yesterday's show, we saw the security gateway on the Dodge truck, right? And it took the aftermarkets about 2 years to get access to that truck. And so I give you the 2020 Nissan Sentra, completely new B18 platform for Nissan, a very different vehicle than the 2019. So in scan tool terms, they've also implemented a central gateway in this vehicle to where currently, as of today, if you're not a Nissan Consult software, you cannot connect to this car and get all the controllers.
Well, let me ask you a question. What about the right to repair? I thought that I had a right to. Well, how does that affect?
Well, it's obviously something that the right to repair is emissions-related controllers, right? They're trying to expand that access into telematics data as well.
But we're not there yet.
Right?
Well, I think people misunderstand that, so I'm glad you brought that up. They think that right to repair means that the aftermarket tooling companies and aftermarket companies in general get access to everything on the car, and that therefore that tool is okay. But that's not the case.
It's
not what we see.
Issue.
Right.
So there's groups out there that are really trying to make that access more available to the aftermarket tools and such. But I look at it like if you just turn over the keys to ADAS components to anyone, that could be inherently dangerous, and we'll cover why.
Well, I think we would all agree that we're not just going to let anyone start performing heart surgery.
Right.
Right. So if the bill went up before the Senate that basically said, hey, I think anyone who has a scalpel and a bypass machine should be able to do heart surgery, right? We would all go, oh my God, no. But we want everybody to touch critical components of a vehicle speeding down the road at 70 miles an hour. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. So I brought a little bit of a show and tell for you.
Okay.
So we talked about hardware and software, right? So the software is console in this case. The interface for Nissan is this piece of hardware here.
Okay.
So it's going to connect to this Panasonic Toughbook, and then the application console runs on that, and we'll run through that on this vehicle. I've also brought a couple of other OEMs with me. Some of them are rather small. This is Volkswagen. So this is one of the VAS 6154. So this is their hardware that runs the Otis application. So that's their diagnostic software. And then this is the Denso DSTI. This is the tool, the hardware for Subaru. So when you run the Subaru SSM4 software, you're going to run it on the DSTI.
Okay.
So it's really a handshake between hardware and software. At asTech, we're physically connected to each piece of hardware for each OEM. So we use the hardware and the software. And so that's one of the big differences for us.
Okay.
So another thing that we've got, I've got a lot of folks, I think we were bombarded on social media yesterday about people wanting to get into the game and start calibrating cars. And how many pages do you think the radar procedure is on this Sentra?
Three or four.
Yeah.
3 or 4 pages?
It's just a Nissan.
Yeah, it's
Just a Nissan.
Famous last words. It's just a Nissan. This procedure is 25 pages long. So as you can see, we've laminated it.
That's just for the front radar.
This is just front radar.
But now when you're talking about hardware, so one of the things, so there's this hardware, there's the software that's actually talking, but there's other hardware now, right? Because you got a lot of stuff hooked up to this vehicle that's got a price tag on it too.
Yep. Yes. So I guess you're referring to the aftermarket hardware.
Well, I'm just sitting there thinking, if I want to get into this game, it's not just buy a scan tool.
Right.
Right. So if I'm going to try to think that I want to do calibrations, I have to look at everything that we've got kind of in front of this car. We've got stuff attached to the wheels. We've got, and it's different for every OE.
Right. Well, the first question we get is space, because you don't want to have environmental failures where you're either really poor lighting, floor is a problem, you got metal in the floor, things like that. So the space is definitely a concern. So you want to make sure that you have ample space. And I asked shops, how many calibrations do you want to be able to do at one time? If you want to do a forward radar and a blind spot and a 360, you're going to need some space, right? So if you're going to do one car at a time, 1,800 to 2,000 square feet at a minimum is what you need. So we also use, at our shop, we use a special coating on the floor to document so that we can write on the floor. It's a giant dry erase board. Yeah. And so when you're writing out the physical measurements on the floor, you can notate that, right? So the other thing is
I'm going to be real honest.
Yeah.
I've not been in a shop in the last 20 years. I don't care how big of a shop or how nice it is. I've not been in a shop that's got the capability of doing that.
Yeah.
They barely have 500 square feet to think of adding an extra technician. 1,800 square feet to do calibrations?
Right.
Nobody's got that in their shop.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with Daniel last week when he was here, and he was talking with somebody that he was going, hey, I've got somebody who is interested in getting in the game. He's like, can you give me some bullets on what I can do? I said, well, the first thing you need to do is really think about, do you really want to get in the game?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of sexy right now. It's kind of exciting.
Well,
but I think we really need to take a step back and recognize kind of where our expertise is and what we should and shouldn't be doing. Not to say you can't get in the game, but you really need to think about it and analyze it.
Well, I want to introduce my compadre here. This is Bill Greathead. He's our instructor for the Nissan course that we're holding in Jacksonville. So him and I are kind of doing that together. And one of the things that, Bill's a pretty soft-spoken guy. Would you guys agree?
I would agree.
Yeah.
If you want to see Bill get angry, not document your tire pressure properly, not writing your measurement on the floor, having your strings off, things like that, he becomes not quiet.
Really?
So, he gets angry. So,
hey, walk over there and kick the target.
That's not going to go out well. So another thing that we're big on is the SOP that we have at asTech for calibration. And this is just the prep of the vehicle, right? So
we
this
like
is
SOPs.
We love SOPs.
This is the tire pressure. This is cleaning the windshield. We see a lot of cameras, lane cameras that are not installed properly, so they're crooked in the mount. That's part of our SOP is to check all that and making sure that We don't have excessive cargo in the vehicle. We've actually rigged some of the student vehicles down in Jacksonville where I made a coffin that said Jimmy Hoffa and I put it in the trunk. And I want them to get the cargo out is the point, right? Yeah, so baby seats, that kind of stuff. The things that create excess weight, we want to pull that stuff out, and that's part of our SOP here.
Not to go too far off on a tangent, but could you just give us the high-level overview of this training that you're talking about with Nissan? What exactly is it? Just an asTech thing? You partner with Nissan? What exactly is that?
It's a great question. So it's the first OEM-backed hands-on ADAS class.
Okay.
Nissan came to us earlier in the year and wanted it. We worked with the collision advice team, Mike Anderson and Tracy Dombrowski. We took dealer-level curriculum and put a collision spin on it because Bill and I went through as students on the dealer curriculum, and it had a heavy mechanical focus.
Sure.
It was digital volt and ohm meters and chasing wiring diagrams and things like that. And while those things are important, it really doesn't simulate what we see in collision. Right. So we took 5 brand new Nissans and an Infiniti and broke them, and went in and bugged the vehicles with all kinds of scenarios that you would see in a collision environment. And the learner has to come through and physically repair the car and make it good and actually calibrate the vehicle. So it's not designed to be easy. It's not designed for everyone. But it's currently open to Nissan and Infiniti certified shops. We hope it'll be open to others in the future. But it's something that we're really excited about, and we're going to start launching starting next month.
I think about the pictures I've seen of you posting in this class and what's all just involved in this particular OE. This is a mass-produced, mass-sold OE.
Yeah.
How in the world would I think as a shop that I can master every OE that I'm going to service? Yeah. I guess if I was a dealer focused and 90% of my workload was one OE, awesome. But if I'm a multi-brand store, I mean, targets alone are going to hit me for $100 grand.
They can start studying now with the individual OE's service sites. If you can't navigate Nissan Tech Info, probably not going to pass the class. Yeah, and it's really tough.
One of the things I know we're going to show that's super important to me. I have a soapbox, right? And I've made that soapbox pretty plain to the industry and pretty much out there. If an OE has a procedure for something that calls out for specific tooling, and you don't use it, then you don't get to tell me that you also deserve to get paid OE procedures for the welding and for anything else. So you're either going to follow the OE or you're not. There's a reason why the OE has the procedures for that. But then bottom line, the reason the OE has those procedures when it comes to scanning and calibration is because the other stuff doesn't work.
Right.
So I don't care how many ads in a magazine are bought. I don't care what salesman stops by your shop with this latest all-in-one invention that's going to let you do 5 OEs. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so because it doesn't work, we're putting customers in jeopardy, and that's one of the things I know, Jake, you're just going to show us your asTech tool and how that works. I'm going to jump in on some other things that I just think people need to see.
Yeah, so, well, the targeting is one thing, right? But then you could have software gaps, right?
Well, you just told me that.
Like the security gateways and things can create software gaps.
Well, for the truck, for that Dodge Ram truck, super popular redesign. Everybody loved it. It got Truck of the Year. It sold well, and it took the aftermarket tools 2 years to catch up.
Yeah.
If I know I'm already hitting X number of vehicles before we're even in that model year, technically speak, how many shops were trying to do Dodge Ram trucks for 2 years that were doing them wrong?
Right.
And didn't know they were doing them wrong because I think there's a misconception that, well, if the tool doesn't work, it's going to tell me it doesn't work. Nope. Yeah. Doesn't tell you that.
I want to go back to one thing that you said about the training program that you designed it to not be easy. Well, there's nothing easy about this.
There's nothing easy about it.
Again, it's one of those other myths and misconceptions that are out there. Is like, I hook the scan tool up and push the easy button. There's no easy button for this.
I can tell you that the asTech and collision advice team do not feel right just turning you loose if you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. And that's the bottom line.
Well, the way I explain it to people is that if you put that quarter panel on wrong, it has some safety consequences. If that vehicle is hit again in that side, in that quarter.
Yeah.
If you do this wrong, it has safety consequences the moment it starts to roll off your lot, because these advanced systems on these cars are designed to help the car drive. Right. It helps the car see the road. It helps the car make intelligent decisions about operation. So if it thinks it's in the wrong lane and jerks the steering wheel, or it doesn't tell you something's in your blind spot and you just go, oh, there's not a mirror light, I'm going to merge, you cause accidents.
Right.
So if there ever was something that has the ability to hit you with more liability, it's this.
Yeah. Another thing, not to give away the class here, but the other thing that we often overlook in the collision environment is the trim level. So the base model car might be an S model Sentra, and it only has forward emergency braking, right? So then you move up into an SV, which is what this one is, and then you have intelligent cruise control and emergency braking. The SR Platinum, which is what we have in the class, has full intelligent cruise control, and the Altimas have available ProPilot Assist. And so all three cars have radar, but they have different versions of software to dictate what features they have. So while they may share fenders and hoods and doors, their wiring diagrams, their wiring harnesses, their control module counts are very different based on trim level. So it's critical that you recognize what trim level you're working on.
And this thing is loaded, right? We'll play price. Well, I'm not gonna make you play price. This is a $22,000 car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's got pedestrian protection. It's got the automatic. I mean, it's got rear braking.
Yeah. The only thing I saw that
is,
it didn't have is 360 cam, which came on the SR Platinum.
Yeah.
But he's right. It's a high trim level car that's fairly affordable, and if you've driven, it's actually pretty nice. So it's something that a lot of people are going to buy.
This will be mass on the road for families. I see a lot of car seats and kids in the back of these, and then I see these are the cars that a lot of dads buy for their kids to go to college.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of heart in those cars, and there's a lot of souls that travel in them, and that's why we got to do this right. So, Jake, show me the right way.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump to the console. Collision Hub team, if you could show us the HDMI, and we're connected to the console. So I've already connected to the vehicle. We have the factory VCI in place, and we've identified that this is a 2020 Sentra. I'm going to go down and confirm. And now it's going to perform a system call to all the controllers on board. So this is the build data piece. This is the piece that we got a lot of questions around. Does the OEM tool have the build data? Yes, it does. And then it says this is an SV model. It's going to have these controllers on board. And then SR Platinums obviously would have a different controller for a round view monitor. So
now, was there something you had to do with the secure gateway to get there, or is it just
no? The gateway part's coming up.
All
Yeah,
good to go? Okay.
that part's coming. You can see our battery voltage up at the top. We are battery supported. You might have noticed that we do have the hazards on. With the key on, engine off, good best practice to run the hazards. It keeps the intelligent key awake, keeps the bus awake.
We learned that.
I screwed that up last week.
We learned that last week.
Keep it from timing out. So
Yeah.
we should have had him on
kinda
first
smart.
before we went.
those of you that think we take too long, it's still running. So we're only as fast as the OEM scan tool, and that speed changes by tool.
Out of curiosity, Jake, a car like this, the Nissan Sentra, we're talking that $20,000 car. How many modules, computer sensors? What's on this car?
Yeah. Console's going to tell us how many here.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So we ran the aftermarket, and it picked up 3.
Yeah.
Only 3 because the gateway wouldn't let it pass.
Some of you may have this tool in your facility. Some of you may be being asked to buy this tool and the rest of the stuff that goes with this tool. If you can see the tool. Can we see the tool that's in my hand? Are we still? Yeah. You may have this tool in your shop, or someone's trying to get you to come buy this tool, and we're going to show you why I go crazy online when somebody says buy this tool.
But it's picked up all 3 of those modules.
There you go. Yeah, and then some, right?
Right.
So as you can see, I've got 3 pages of controllers. Okay?
So there are 3 pages of controllers on there.
And this is in 3 modules.
I got 3.
Yeah. So there's
more than 1 per page on there, I'm going to guess.
There are 20 controllers on this vehicle.
So I'm 17 wrong.
Yeah. So
If I hit this tool
Yep.
to a car for pre-scan, post-scan, calibration, whatever,
But these are the important ones, I thought.
I'm missing 17. Well, I got basically what he's talking about, which is the right to repair stuff. I got emission shit.
Yeah.
So that's going to get me bleeped, isn't that?
Yeah.
That's going to get me bleeped. But I've got the emission stuff. I have none of the stuff that works in the collision center that we need to care about, because that's not how the Right to Repair Act works.
Right.
So if you're online posting that I can use any aftermarket tool because there's this thing called Right to Repair, here's your proof.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
And the tool also went up to the B17 chassis car, which was the 2019 model.
Right.
And as I said at the beginning of the show, very different car than the B18. As you can see at the top of the console here, I've got the B18, which is a 2020. Another question that I know both of you have asked me before is the freeze frame data.
Yeah.
Tell me about the freeze frame data. This vehicle actually had a couple of past fault codes in it, even though it's brand new.
Oh.
How many miles? What's the mileage on that there, Bill?
Current miles on this car is 193.
193 miles, and we have freeze frame data that's showing the actual pressure, and then I can show you the freeze frame data on the radar. So right here,
Oh, Jake,
we've got
I'm sorry,
odometer
16 miles.
16 miles. Okay, so at 16 miles, we're showing that there was freeze frame data that there was a radar concern, right? So we've got a radar problem with this vehicle. Now, Bill, is there a dash light on in this car?
There's no dash lights currently on.
So there's no dash lights. Do you see red?
I see some red.
So the red's not good.
I don't see red here, Jason.
The one thing I think, based on what I learned yesterday, I think Sean may have taken this car for a
Right,
ride.
Sean, take it for a drive.
Yeah.
But here's the legal concern that I want you to think about as a shop. if you charged to pre-scan and post-scan a car and you're hooking an aftermarket tool up to that car and it's telling you there's nothing wrong, but clearly there is something wrong, and then you deliver that car, who is liable?
Right.
Right? You missed a radar issue. You go, hey, the car looks good, let's send it down the road, right? But you clearly missed something because you used the wrong tool, which is why they always have the reason they put out the position statements and they test tools and approve tools is so this doesn't happen to their customers.
You cannot rely on the presence or absence of a DTC or dash light to determine a requirement. So that, I mean, that's a big one right there, right? So the labor operations on the vehicle really drive what calibrations it needs, right? So in this case, I do have an active DTC that's showing that the radar is off center. So as you can tell, I messed up your wagon over here.
All right.
Right, and we can see
my grocery getter.
We can see that there's a problem. So a couple of ways that you can do this. So this is a digital level. It's actually part of the tooling for Toyota vehicles for checking the radar angles for the front and rear on their vehicles. The rears don't require it on the Nissans, the front do. So as a quick check, you can check to see vertical and horizontal axis on the radar. You can also check it with console. So I'm going to demonstrate that. We're going to go to the data monitor. We're going to look at the horizontal and vertical values.
All right, so
now,
we're back in your computer.
when you check this in the service manual, it will vary from Nissan to Infiniti vehicles. Some Infiniti vehicles are like plus or minus 4 degrees. This Nissan Sentra is plus or minus 3 degrees. So you can see I've got a horizontal value of 5.34 and a vertical value of 4.32. So clearly I've got something bent. I've got something hurt. We need to measure this vehicle. We need to check out all the mounting locations. We need to check for aftermarket parts. Those kinds of things can affect the radar angle.
So this could be a shop that thought they had a minor front end bumper cover. Right. They did a what do we call it? A fast track repair, put a cover on it, or rolled it down the road. But there was more there. Yeah.
If you go to the first picture of the bumper damage that we actually had a shop that had that exact problem. Had been to the dealer twice. They couldn't figure out why the radar angle was the value it is. And as you can see, the bumper damage was fairly minor. And if you go to the next one where it shows the top view of the core support, you can see that condenser has got a little bit of a horseshoe in it. If you go to the side view, you can see that is a pronounced curve in that core support and in that condenser. So sometimes the damage is really subtle. I mean, this thing is pretty flimsy. It can be bent by hand, no problem.
It's hard to see if it's bent.
It's very hard to see it. Yeah.
And that's the thing that we get a lot of questions on, like, hey, this bracket is bent. Can I just straighten the bracket? Well, how would you ever know where that bracket even needs? There's no measurements for the bracket, right? So buy a new bracket, put it back on there.
Please buy a new one.
Don't shim the sensor to try to get my degrees back
have you
there.
Seen someone shim a sensor?
Well, I'm just saying you can thin it down if you leave a couple of degrees on it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, in the class when we started
that's like putting a fuse on an airbag, right?
Right. I mean, they wanted us to shim it to simulate a bent sensor. We actually bought brackets and bent them because that's more realistic.
We've all seen some stuff, right? I mean, hey, we just got to turn that light off.
You also have the physical radar itself. So this is an example of what's in the car. And as you can see, would you like to read what it says for everybody?
Do not drop.
Do not drop, right? I don't encourage you to crack one open, but I did on this one. We've also had conditions where early radars can have failures internally where they'll leak silicone out of one of these diodes and it'll run across the radar array and can create a stain condition. So it's a DTC that will not go away. It just sits there and stain, and you can't make it go away. So there are TSPs that are active from Nissan and Infiniti on those, and a shop just needs to recognize if they have a failure.
So this goes back to why a lot of times in our repair procedures it says if there's a sensor or something in the area of impact of the collision, we want to replace that.
Right.
So if I can't drop it, I damn sure can't hit it with another car.
Exactly. Dropping it from a couple of feet is going to be a little bit less of an impact than even a 5-mile-an-hour collision. It's just a minor accident, right? Well, it's in that area of damage. Just put a new sensor on there so we know that it's going to be safe.
So clearly we've got something going on in the front of this thing where the angles are wrong, right? And I think you guys know that we've got a bracket problem. So Bill, if we want to pop this front end off and let's change this bracket real quick. We'll talk a little bit about the tooling that's connected to the vehicle. As a best practice and what we teach in the course is your levels need to be on the base of that target. We want to make sure it's level at all times. You're leveling the face of the radar target as well. And like I said, if you want to see Bill get angry, let him find you without a level on your target.
Absolutely.
I kind of now just want to see Bill angry.
It's something to see, honestly.
Can somebody go get Larry?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I'll tell you, it took a couple of.
We don't get him angry. We don't want him to leave.
I'll tell you, it took a couple of Mike Anderson screams at him to get him to come out of his shell, but he's officially out of the shell.
All right.
So
He's done it. He
Wait,
got me there.
Mike yelled at you?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he did.
You want to help me with this side?
Yeah.
I think people
grab
expect the
those
yellings from me. They don't expect them from Mike. So I think Mike yelling at you might go, wait,
Yeah.
what? Yeah. For
Yeah,
me, it's
this-
just like, hey, it's another day.
And back to that bracket straightening too. Like, how would you ever know if you can't eyeball? Look at all
You
the
wouldn't.
angles on there.
And I
like
can't
you
take a
said,
picture of that, and I can't send it into the insurer.
No.
And that's one thing
Yep.
for the, I know we get a lot of insurers that watch what we do. And this is why the whole universal scan tool, and I'm going to pay a universal dollar amount. That's why this doesn't work. And this isn't, I want to argue with you about up and over on
Right.
Right. I'm not opposed to cone tape, right? It is what it is. But this is good God. This is work, not work. And so I definitely don't want to take a shortcut here. And I definitely don't want a universal tool.
We got to look at it like this: as these vehicles age, components like this need to be identified sooner in the process because they're expensive.
Right.
The calibration steps are expensive, the parts are expensive, and you don't want that additional severity at the end of the repair that you didn't plan for, that you didn't tell a customer about, an insurer about, any of those kinds of things, because it creates LOR problems, all those kinds of things. Active around this stuff as
And
possible.
some of
and
these,
not-
I think one of the things, like on our blind spot monitors, if I replace one, I got to replace the other. Sometimes those things come in pairs.
Yeah, so you have a
right?
master-slave concept where one is a master and the other is the slave. And so if you have a communication failure, that's one of the other things that we teach with this. Really, the ground decides what radar the vehicle's on. So if you, in a collision scenario where you've got a quarter panel that's been hit, it crushed the radar, the bracket, and the connector. If you repin the connector wrong, you can actually upset what radar the side it thinks it's on. So that's the kind of stuff that we had to add to the class because that was basically they were looking for continuity, ground, and all those things are important. But when
Right.
we're trying to chase it in a collision environment, it's just a little bit different.
Right. I would say typically if this car comes into the service department now, you're right. It's come because of a service complaint, and I'm generally trying to find something that maybe went wrong in the production of the vehicle. And
Yeah.
that's those ground wires and stuff. We're messing with a car that we just took the whole side off of.
This thing looks exactly like the other bracket.
I know.
Yeah.
The other thing we'll identify early in the process as well is with the world we live in right now, the supply chain has been decimated, and trying to get parts can be a challenge. So again, if I don't catch that until Thursday, now I'm gonna have more issues on my hands.
I think you guys saw my Nissan Titan with a little bit of freight damage on
Yeah.
it. I got to experience that, and it was one of those things that, to your point, the supply chain is not just a Nissan problem, it's an OEM problem across the board.
Right.
And so, when you're at the end of the repair, remember, calibration is always the last stop on the bus. We're always, the car's clean, the customer's coming at 5,
Hurry up and get it out of here.
It should just calibrate, no problem, right? And then we find an issue.
Well, Jake,
Yeah.
if I'm using this tool, no problem, right?
Well-
This car delivers.
Could be a problem.
Could be a problem,
Could be a
right?
problem. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. It's a
So-
pet peeve. It's my soapbox. It's my new soapbox.
So
And you got a
It's
few
fresh.
of them.
I got a few of them. This one's the newest one.
The other thing about this, something that's unique with Nissan Infiniti vehicles is that, as you know, we had mobile trucks across the country. We had calibration centers, things like that. This is one of the calibrations that we would not do in the field because it was very difficult to transport that target and not damage it, not have it. It has a mirror, piece of glass in it.
Right.
The radar, actually, the radar on this one was a little bent. We had to straighten it. So those kinds of things can create bad
batteries
calibrations.
were dead,
Batteries were
and-
dead,
yeah.
yeah.
If I'm laying
So-
that down in the back of my truck and it's bouncing around, or my
That's
back of my
just
van,
not,
that's gonna be
not
a
good.
challenge.
So, and then you would encounter an early
Basically,
generation.
what he's saying is we're not taking care of our equipment.
So
So,
you'd encounter an early generation Rogue or a Sentra, and that one you have to elevate the platform and get it high enough. So that was another challenge.
well,
So-
I see pictures all the time where it would be an 18 Nissan and it's sitting on the shop floor, and we're like, no.
Yeah.
But somebody had come in and said that they were a mobile company,
Yeah.
and
Want to snap this
again,
bumper back on?
it's just one of
let's
those
do it with all.
things.
Okay.
Yep. All right, so now I'm going to move back to the console. So
Okay.
showing you the central gateway. So as you can see, I got a big red traffic light there. That's telling me that I'm Jason, restricted.
Restricted, there
Right.
you go.
So even if you're a console that is not current, like your subscription's not current, your tech info login is not credentials are not good, it will not unlock the gateway of this vehicle. So even an outdated OEM tool would not work. You have to have an up-to-date OEM tool that is connected to a current subscription, and that subscription is paired to the serial number on this tool. So it's a pretty intricate gateway, digital padlock for the vehicle.
And this is not, I mean, Jake, you spend more time with Nissan and a lot of the OEs because that's your job. This isn't the OEs trying to keep other tools out. This is them trying to protect the cars from hacking.
Cybersecurity.
They're not just trying to be mean. They're
Right.
meanies, right?
Yeah, I think everybody defaults to they just want to sell parts
Right.
or they just want to sell a tool, and that's not this case.
They want their vehicle repaired properly.
Well, I think we all remember, was it a Jeep Cherokee
Yeah.
that we proved in Michigan could be hacked and
Yeah.
pulled the car over and shut it down, but that was a white hat hack, right? Somebody trying to just do the right thing. What if it had not
And that was
been?
already 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you saw in 2018, they put their security gateway in the FCA vehicles. And, Nissan has followed suit, and you're going to see some from Subaru. You're going to see some from Mercedes-Benz. There's also a rumor that Volkswagen could be working on something as well.
Yeah.
But you will see them in 2021 on the Subaru and the Mercedes.
Right. And it's going to continue. I mean, we're not saying that we want the oil change places and all the other places not to have access to the cars.
Yeah.
We do believe in fair market competition for that.
Yep.
But these systems they control steering. They control whether the car leaves the roadway at a certain time. I think we would all agree we want some security there, and we don't want anybody to just go buy a shelf tool for $1,500.
Well, once again, in that situation, the concern is known. I need to reset a service indicator light, right?
Right.
The concern is known. In collision, we have to confirm what the concern is. We need access to everything, and we actually run full health checks on the car. So now I've logged in with the Tech Info credentials, and as you can see, my security gateway is now green, right?
Okay.
Showing that this vehicle is officially unlocked. Now, this is where understanding how Consult works. So there's a tab that you have to use to send the radar command to the car, right? And it's called work support. And as you can see, it's not there. So this is one of the quirks that we have to go in.
not there either.
and
It's not here either.
so we have to log out of the tool and go back. And those of you that think that we take too long, these are the kinds of things that we do on the other end. So once we go back into the software application, we'll be able to access the gateway.
I am baffled at something that is so critical to the health of the customer after that we complain that something takes too long. I kind of want it to take long. I mean, I kind of want to know you're checking everything and you're doing what you need to do.
I tell the shops, I'm never going to win a relay race with an aftermarket tool.
Yeah.
But I'll win one against a dealer every day, right? So that's something that, where they take days, I might take an hour, right? But that's something that, we weren't built to race against aftermarket tools. That's not what we do.
Right.
Even back to the psychology of it, right? So if it's taking a little bit longer, maybe it gives you that level,
set
that
here,
psychological level that, hey, you know what, it is taking a while, so maybe they are doing it. Versus like, well, that was quick. Are you sure everything's okay?
So another key element of the prep of the vehicle, the SOP, is does the vehicle need an alignment, right?
Yeah.
So as you can see, part of the targeting for this tool is a hunter alignment head. And as you can see, we mount the laser to the alignment head, shoots to this back paddle back here. Let me turn it on so you can see it.
Okay.
And this is how we confirm that we're square, right? And he literally can move that steering wheel and affect that radar value. We can also, you can see it goes to the mirror at the very front, right? And so we're checking the alignment of the vehicle suspension before we actually do the radar calibration, right?
Hey, Jake, I know we're working on straight off the OE tool, straight off the car, but I got a question that came in. I want to get it before I lose it.
Yep.
So we know the asTech tool is internet-based, right? We communicate. I hook this up, and then at your end in Jacksonville or whatever, you're on this.
We're on the console hardware.
So the shop's question is, what are the internet speed requirements, upload, download, et cetera? What do they need to think about?
It's a great question, and it's one of those things that we actually don't push as much data as like an IP would, like a CCC or a Autotex Mitchell. Our tool is designed to work with the internet. We actually monitor the internet traffic. We know when it's busy and when it's not. Everybody checks their email about 8 o'clock. I'm gonna let you know that.
Yeah.
So that's something that we monitor constantly. And when we were working with another OEM on validation, they asked the same question, and they put the asTech and the scan tool in the car through a stress test to where they were sending tons of packets of data back and forth, and we didn't fall off once.
Okay. So shop doesn't need fiber. They don't need to think about massive
We do want it
upgrades.
wired though, and actually the console does not have Wi-Fi. Even though it's a PC, it's stuck in airplane mode and we can't take it out.
Right.
So it is currently hardwired as well.
So we want the shop to be able to connect their asTech to a hardwire Ethernet connection.
Right.
And the great thing about hardwire Ethernet, whether it's like a Cat6 cable or whatever, you can have hundreds of feet of it, and you're not going to drop off anything unless your collision hub yesterday.
Okay.
But
so we're getting ready to do the scan tool part that everybody's so excited about, right? They think it's a big part of calibration. I promise. Get your bells and whistles ready. Here it is. So here's the.
I didn't have a bell. Do you have a whistle?
Here's the work support tab. As you see, I had to go out of the application, come back in. Here's the work support tab. It's telling me millimeter wave radar adjust. I'm going to hit start. I can see the angles. We've changed the sensor. We hit next. It's in progress. It is completed. Ta-da! Now it's done. Okay. So now you look. The new values are within specification. Plus or minus 3 degrees is what we want.
Yeah, you're definitely good there.
And so Bill and I always try to get it at around 1 or a little less, right? And so we can get it as center as possible. And so, this is the kind of thing that we want to identify. If you have structure damages in the front, you can change all the parts you want, and you're still going to have weird radar angles. So that's why, Larry and we have been harping for years that the cars ought to be measured, no matter what the damage is. So.
Right, pre-measure.
Yep. So the scan tool side of it's done. We'll go back through and we should see the DTC has moved to passed, and indeed it has, as you can see. And this is where on the post scan you would go and erase the fault code, and we should have a clean bill of health.
Well, now it finally matches this tool.
So there we go. So no DTCs are detected. And then we'll run back through, hit all of the controllers on board just to make sure there's nothing else in there. And that's just a best practice that we run through. As I can see, diagnose all systems, going to pull the VIN, look at build data, and then run through all the controllers again, make sure we're clean. So this is where you want to make sure you hit that road test, right? So things like intelligent cruise control that this vehicle has only has a set condition. So 20 miles an hour in drive is when and then the radar cruise is available. So you want to engage it, make sure you're on an approved highway if you're a ProPilot car, because it'll only work on ProPilot 2.0, it only works on approved highways. So that's going to be 30, that's not going to be 5, right? It's not going to be, that can be in front of your house or in front of your shop. You got to get on an interstate, right?
Right.
And so that's where identifying your test track from a shop perspective, going over that with a customer that, hey, you may see your car out on the interstate. It's part of our process. It's approximately this many miles long.
I'm going to take you to Florida on vacation.
Yeah,
I promise you I'm going to
You don't need to be at the drive-thru picking up a hamburger, One of the things that's unique while this is running, I'll show you, that I really like on the Titan is when you buy it, they give you 6 months of this free, and it's their telematics service. Mm-hmm. So their telematics service, I've got visibility of what you're doing. I know that you're working on my truck, right? And that I can see the tire pressure, I can see the DTCs, I can set a boundary around your shop. If you go outside of the boundary, I get notified in a notification. If you go over the speed limit that I have set, I get notified. And I can also run my own health check. And so these are the things that customers are going to have access to, and it's not expensive. The remote access to the car alone makes me want to resubscribe because I can start the truck remotely, and the AC is cold by the time I get there. So,
I got to rethink that speed thing.
Yeah. I mean, if you're out in the GTR, giving it the tune-up out on the highway, and they get notified, could be a problem.
Yeah.
So,
but I think it's important to have that.
Donuts if I stay under the. I mean, if I.
It could be any time, right? The donate indicator could be coming.
Okay.
Could be coming soon. So.
But it is important to have that conversation with the customer up front. So if they're not getting a notification, going, what are you doing to my car? Hey, we told you.
Or it's a sales factor. Say, hey, if you have this turned on, you're going to know when we're working on your car. You're going to know what we're doing. You're going to be able to verify that what we told you we were going to do on the estimate, we're actually doing. And it's just full transparency.
Going over the post-scan results, both pre and post-scan results, very valuable thing to help a person that has telematics. So if they've got an app and they're monitoring what you're doing, go over the pre and post scan with them. Yep, this is how it came in. This is how it left, and gives them peace of mind that you did check it, right?
Yeah.
So as you can see, our radar center fault code is now gone. I left the tire pressure ones in there. Those are maintenance items. I'm a believer that if it's not loss related, leave those DTCs in there because the next technician that connects to it, this troubleshooting tire pressure, would love to see that, right?
Sure.
So.
Okay, there's a lot of questions, so I'm going to try to go through these.
All right, we'll go for it.
I'm going to take them in order that I get them.
Okay.
First, is Nissan having, so this is a Nissan specific, and I know you can't speak for Nissan. But anyway, I'm going to ask it. That's because that's the kind of girl I am. Is there any movement where Nissan may be thinking changing the wording of recommended to scanning to required?
I know that they've asked for help on that from Japan. And I think you've heard Mike Anderson talk about Japanese culture. That if it's recommended, it's all about it's a respect thing.
Correct.
That they recommend you do it, right? So I think changing that verbiage could be tough. But I look at it like the position statement alone shouldn't drive the requirement.
Correct.
You know, the service manual needs to drive what you're doing.
All right, now my soapbox.
Okay.
I'm so sick of this conversation because those are service specifications, and I don't care what that word is. If I'm not scanning it, just like if I'm not measuring the vehicle, it is impossible for me to know what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
You're going in blind, and you're hoping. And
I mean, for the, and I know why it keeps coming up because we keep having to have conversation with bill payers, and unfortunately, our bill payers are not technicians. They were making my coffee last week, and I tried to hire those people, and I managed them, and I know how hard it was to get a pool of people to apply for being an adjuster in the field, much less trying to staff in-house claims positions at call centers and whatever. So I know that helps them understand, but we have got to get to a point where, and I'll throw this back on the insurer's feet, where we actually reintroduce training back into the claims business so that they understand the days of me walking up to a car and indemnifying for physical damage, what I can see and go, that needs a fender, that needs a headlamp. Those days are over, and it's only going to get, I don't want to say worse, but it's only going to get more and more where that's a computer on wheels. In fact, it's probably 150 different computers on wheels in a way to look at it. So I would love to have that, but I know that as soon as I get an OE that does that, next year I'm going to have them write something different and write something different.
Yeah. I get it. It's just it's time to get over
Well,
it. But we do need to educate.
One of the things that we teach in the class is specifics, and a lot of time Bill and I will role play the insurer. I'm not paying you this. I'm paying you on this car based on a position statement. Tell me why this SV platform Sentra with front end damage required it, right? And we say, okay, we pull the radar values and it's out of specification. Here they are, and here's what good looks like, and here's what bad looks like. And suddenly I've got reimbursement, right? So that's what we're trying to coach is the specifics. You know,
there was a time in this industry when we didn't do anything that wasn't specifically a line item on an estimate that was given to us by a third party. We have to start doing things on cars because it's the right thing to do. Now, that probably means, and Larry and I talk about it all the time and we make people mad, the way we pay in the body shop has to change. If I'm still paying people off of line items on an estimate, and that's how my technicians make their living, then it handcuffs me on what I can and can't do to the car. It handcuffs me on pre-measure and all these other things. And that's why salary or hourly becomes better for the shop owner. And you just want to do that because you want to hurt technicians. No, man, I want to do that because I want to fix cars right.
Yeah.
And so that's the way it's got to be.
If I've got those SOPs that say this is how we fix cars.
This car is a perfect example of how you can't rely on dashboard diagnostics to tell you what's going on.
Or
because it had an active DTC, but no dash light.
It looked great.
Yeah, it looked. Didn't look that bad.
Honestly, most people would have delivered it and said it was no problem, especially if they were using that tool. They would have sent it off no problem, and we clearly had a problem. So that was an issue.
Yep.
All right, so Nick, our buddy with ADAS Think,
Yeah.
right, has a question. He says, Jake, hey, the position statement on front radar is very broad.
Right.
Required, if any, jolting of the radar. Jolting of the radar.
Yeah.
I like
But the
jostling
actual
better.
service info usually references front end structural repairs.
Right.
Which of these takes precedence?
Yeah, so remember the service manual assumes that the center line of the vehicle is true. So if you haven't done your job as a collision technician, we don't know if the center line is good or bad until you measure, right?
Okay.
So we need to establish that first. As I mentioned, across the Nissan Infiniti lineup, that radar angle changes by model. So we have certain Infinities are plus or minus 4 degrees. This one's plus or minus 3 degrees. There's another one that dips down to 2.5.
Goes down to 2, yeah.
Yeah, so there's something that you need to look that up on a model by model to make sure, and that's why the statement's broad, right?
Okay.
Because it covers multiple models.
Okay, so basically, there's no real precedence there. I've got to, as a repairer, look at the car, look at the damage, look at what happened, and make a decision.
And don't forget the trim level, because the ProPilot cars will actually have a ProPilot button on the steering wheel and an electric brake caliper in the back, because they're capable of stop and go autonomy, to where they can come to a complete stop, resume when traffic moves ahead. It's a Larry type of device for the Belt Parkway, right? He's in traffic and it stops and goes autonomously and uses the electric brake caliper to do that.
Now, speaking of just like braking,
Yeah.
we've had some incidences roll up lately where we've had just emergency lockup brake. What's going on with that? Well, I got you here.
It's a truly frightening moment, honestly. I will tell you that we picked up a vehicle that had been to the dealer twice, was the one we showed you the photos of, and we were showing -6 degrees on the vertical axis, which, after today's class, that's not good, right?
Right.
So going down 95, and the radar caught the backside of the bumper cover, and we experienced a full emergency braking event in the middle of the interstate. So we had to disable the system in the gauge cluster and turn it off completely to get it to the shop. And so I would caution you, if you have a system that is an array where it's potentially damaged. Be really careful.
And you're pretty good drivers. You race, you do a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm thinking about Miss Smith, who's 65 and this is her car and she's on her way to see her kids, and she experiences what I like to call is the catastrophic braking event, she's probably not well equipped to get the car over.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if I had touched that car with this tool,
yeah,
who's paying Miss Smith's family?
Could be bad.
Could be bad.
Could be bad. Yeah, and that's one of those things that in racing,
Smith's family
could be bad. Yeah,
could be bad.
Could be bad. Yeah, and that's one of those things that in racing this is. But everyday people, they're really distracted. Yeah. They're on their phones and they're not paying attention anyway. So.
And I always tell shops that I'll put that post-repair inspection hat on. That does a lot of work prepping people for litigation. I will show you no mercy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If Miss Smith ends up in a catastrophic braking accident and is seriously injured or dies,
right,
I will show you no mercy in depot. I will show you no mercy in trial because you took a tool that someone brought to your shop and told you, oh, it's good, and you just believed them because it was cheap and easy and whatever.
Scan tools are much more than just a screwdriver. I mean, they do a lot of things that are unique to that vehicle. So
if I brought you a technician and said this technician knows everything about every model on the road, you would laugh at me. You would be like, there's no way this guy knows this. But why does they bring a tool in your shop and go, it does everything, and you go, oh, okay.
Yeah. First of all, none of us know everything, and I include myself in that. It's something that we have to continue to study. And like I said in yesterday's show, focus on what you're not good at, And I had a European background, and I had to learn the Asians and the domestics, and that's something just continue to study the material and take the resources.
Larry's not even with us.
I know we got a European.
I know, right? I know.
It's too early for the drinking
It was a
game.
Larry plug.
Okay, so another question is, how do I know what modules or what cars my aftermarket tool will and won't do?
Your aftermarket does not alert you when it missed 17 controllers, and it didn't tell us that it missed 17.
And there's no website I can go where the manufacturer of this tool says, hey, we don't have these cars and we don't cover these modules.
Right. It doesn't tell you when it misses a controller, and that's the troubling part about it, right? And so, in the mechanical space, they've been using scan tools longer. They know what they can and cannot do. They know what J2534 can and cannot do. And not every OEM plays nice with J2534. That you need to keep that in mind. So that's where the OEM tooling works every time. And that's why we've had to make the considerable investment to use those tools. And they're not cheap, easy, or fast. And it works against us in some cases. But we try to make sure it works.
Now the other thing that you guys have going, and there's there's a couple other companies in the industry that kind of somewhat do what you guys do, is that it beyond just the hardware and the software.
Yep.
You have actual techs that do this, troubleshoot, work with collision shops that are in tune to our angst.
Right.
And I don't have to try to know what you know, right? I can just go, I have repaired the car, it is now Jake's problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we still need you to be our eyes and ears, right? We can't physically see the damage on the vehicle, and while we look at a battery disconnect very seriously, our client may not. They're like, we disconnect batteries all the time, no big deal, right? Yeah. So we also separate our men and women into domestic, Asian, and European disciplines. So a guy like myself would be working on BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, Audi, things like that. Bill has a domestic background and some Asian, so we would put him in a position to where he could learn the scan tools and service manuals that he's not familiar with. And guys, I think that people really underestimate within the service manual itself. There's all kinds of tutorials on how to navigate the manual, how to navigate even some of the scan tools, and they're very intuitive. And so those resources, if you log into the OE site, they're available to you. And so we utilize those a lot to train our staff and scale our staff.
It's a lot to know. I mean,
it is a lot
when
to
we
know.
talked about just welding yesterday, of here's everything I got to know just to do one weld on one part or whatever, and I know that as a collision repair shop, I don't do that well.
Yeah.
Right. I don't do the physicalities of the vehicle very well. Now you want me to become almost a software engineer and do something else. I don't see the value of this as an in-house service. What I see is a lot of shops trying to figure out how to do it cheaply, not because they want to be cheap, but because there's this arbitrary third-party bill payer up here who's put a dollar amount. I'm only going to pay a 0.5, or I'm only going to pay $50, and they're trying to figure out how to put 10 pounds of knowledge in a 5-pound sack, so to speak, and they're looking for a shortcut or a solution or something that helps them ease the friction and be able to do it, and it's impossible. I'd love to say it was, because if I could say it would work, I mean, there's probably a lot of marketing money there for me, right? I mean, every time I open a magazine, it's like there's 27 ads. There's another one. There's another one. There's another one. There's another one. It used to be paint company ads.
I would tell shops that are trying to get into calibration. Number one, if you're eligible, please come through our class because you're going to learn some things not just with Nissan Infiniti, but calibrations in general. Focus on the 5 brands you're good at or that you do a lot of, right? And don't make that as a gut decision. Use data to support that. What are you working on the most? What are you subletting to the dealers the most and you want to bring in-house? I would never want to start somebody with a Volkswagen Audi because those are it's an advanced process, right? And the alignment machine and the targeting. But that's something if you want to start off with a Toyota, Honda product or a Nissan product, focus on those manufacturers and buy factory tooling for those, and you can use asTech or a factory scan tool to initiate the commands. You saw the scan tool part, very small, right? So of the overall process.
Let's talk about before we get out of here, right?
0.5,
Well, I don't want to say before we get out of here. I got a lot. You brought some aftermarket targets.
Yeah.
Can we see those?
Sure. So it's one that we get a lot of questions about, right? And I'll tell you, we at our company, just like the scan tools, we looked at them as objectively as possible. Are they any good? And I'll tell you the good things. A lot of them are very well made. They're metal and they're hard poster board and things like that. But when you compare them with the OEs, you start seeing some differences. And it's not just camera targets, it's radar targets too. I brought a couple of camera targets with me so that you can see what we're dealing with here. So, on the top, we have OEM. On the bottom, we have aftermarket. Okay? Very popular aftermarket. And so, when you start looking at the size of the physical targets, you start seeing a small size difference on the squares itself. You notice the black corners, right?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things, black and white, the camera picks up black and white patterns, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, and then as they make a change, an OEM adds an additional pattern. So Nissan and Infiniti vehicles actually have pattern for the pedestrian camera that's available on the Armada and the QX80. So if you've got a twin camera system, it actually requires a different pattern. And so keeping up with the patterns is kind of like keeping up with the scan tool software. It changes a lot, right?
Right.
And so that's something that as a repairer, you need to understand what you're working with, right?
Right. So this is kind of critical. So I think a lot of times that when we hold this up, we think and we say, well, the camera's looking for those 3 black squares. And in a way it is, but it's looking for black. It's not looking for a black square. So there's nothing in the programming that says we only want you to find these 3 little black squares.
Right.
So as I start to aim this, all of this extra white space becomes important, and then because the camera's looking for black, as soon as it sees these, it now expands what it's trying to look at. Now I'm off.
Well, it's a game of millimeters, right? And when you're measuring this stuff out, especially in Nissan's lane camera procedure, very, very detailed, perhaps our hardest one that we teach in the course. And when the millimeters, when the target size is different, then what repair procedure do you follow? Because suddenly you've got a different spec that you're looking at. So you're no longer in tech info. I mean, what are you following to make sure the car is going to calibrate?
And there's not a red light that goes, oh, that target doesn't work. You should stop.
Right. It's a camera.
So
it says,
it's a camera. It took a picture.
I see something I'm familiar with, and so I'm good to go. Just like we keep talking about our friend with the ladder and the Honda Lane Watch system.
Well, we go through the Toyota procedures, and you've got a 120, a 160, and a 180 target, and it varies by platform. So if you're like, oh, I do Camrys every day of the week, and then you get an Avalon or a Prius, and all of a sudden it's a different camera pattern, and you better measure it. Even though it's in the procedure, you better physically measure it to make sure it's 160 millimeters. Because we found a couple of things that were mistakes.
But often my aftermarket targets give me 1
Yeah.
for that OE.
Or none. Yeah.
And then
So,
and it doesn't work.
And not to say, it's not an attack on the aftermarkets. I hope that at some point they put something out there that is approved and validated by an OEM that's acceptable.
Yeah.
And then people can start to scale calibrations internally. I hope that they can bring that stuff in-house.
Yeah, it's
just a long way. It's a
we
long
became
road.
a blue ocean in the collision repair industry, and people just saw dollar signs and jumped in and just trying to sell tools. And I have shops trying to solve real problems and serve customers. And some of this just it muddies the water and makes things harder and harder.
The reason why you haven't seen a lot of products from asTech is we're fiercely protective of this. And we know that 80% of the process is the prep. And we don't want to put the tooling in place for somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. Right. And so we're really fierce on the training and that they understand it. And like I said, this class that we're putting on, you pass it or you fail it. There is a scoring mechanism to it. And it's not a threat, but we've got to weed out the people that shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah. Right, because it's safety.
Yep.
Like I said, I can put that quarter panel on wrong, and I'm going to get into trouble if that car gets hit again.
Yep.
I do this wrong, that car's going to find trouble on its own.
Yeah.
those critical braking incidents, those things that are going to wind me in court. And then I have to ask myself as a shop, I mean, so if we put the hat on, if I'm sitting on the plaintiff's side and Larry's usually next there with me with his engineering firm and Erica's on another side over there, and we're preparing and answering questions, you're going to have to answer as the shop. If you did this in-house, you're going to have to answer for me that you had a knowledge level that proved you should have been doing this.
Yep.
And I'm probably going to have somebody like a Jake that's on, that has this expertise from the OEM perspective that's going to be writing the questions for you. And I always go, it's all I can do to answer the welding questions. These aren't questions I want to answer.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're thinking about getting in, or I run into people all the time, I'm going to start a calibration business, Chris, and I'm going to put a building downtown, and I'm going to have a mobile truck, and I'm going to run around and do all the shops in town. And I go, that's great. Really buy a lot of liability insurance if you want to do that, besides the investment that you're going to make in tooling, because this is more liability than welding on a car, in my opinion.
And mentally prepare yourself for the high failure rate.
Yeah.
Because we see about 30% of the front calibrations for radar and camera fail. We see about 50% of rear radar calibrations fail for blind spot. And it's because something else is wrong with the car. We've got a structure issue, we've got a sectioned quarter panel that wasn't positioned properly. We have a variety of different variables that give little to no troubleshooting mechanism in the service manual for us to chase. And so that's what we simulated in the class. We took brand new cars and we put collision scenarios in place for the learner to figure out on their own.
Yeah,
And
that's
so-
one of the things we talk about when we're, if I get a car hit in the side and I go, oh, well, that obviously needs a quarter panel. In this industry for far too long, we've thought, well, I can rough an inner wheelhouse just enough to get the quarter on it, and then it's good. But what we're forgetting now is that wheelhouse is the plane in which I install, which is where this, this Browning, the bracket goes, and it's where my radar goes. And so I see a lot of problems lately because you left the inner structure wrong. And so when you actually put that quarter on, because that wheelhouse was in, you did this in a way. And now that radar's looking here instead of here, and it was because you tried to save a wheelhouse.
That's a new setup and measure that we actually introduced to some of the shops to show them. I think when we were together last time, Larry set up the BSM jig on the radar of the Hyundai that we had, right? And a really neat tool that allows you to establish center line in the vehicle first, and then you make that angle measurement from the right side radar, and then you look in the manual to see what the spec is. And that's something you want to do prior to paint, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's the kinds of things that are new to the industry become problematic at the end if you haven't checked it.
Yep.
Now, are there still, I know some of this was a couple of years ago, some of these calibrations, some of these checks require to be done before assembly. So I've got to check that in my blueprinting process to know, do I send it through full assembly, drive it around, and then we do this, or does it go through partial assembly, test, drive, then reassemble, then road test, then redo it?
Yeah.
Is that still with some OEs?
Yeah, in some cases, as you notice, the Nissan we actually calibrated with the bumper off. You're going to see those types of scenarios. Some of the other early generation cars, the radar is kicked off to the side, and it's actually behind a piece of plastic. So we have repair concerns, we have paint mill thickness, we have clear bras, stuff like that that can create radar blockage issues. So.
Yeah, awesome. Now I got a question here about, I think a lot of us as technicians, we kind of feel like the car's being over-engineered these days, but it's consumer demands, safety demands, or whatever. Jake, what's new? Like, what are we expecting in the future? So you have a lot of insight on what's coming.
Yeah.
And I think some of us already feel like, well, what the hell else could be next?
Yeah.
But what are some of the things that we need to be thinking about coming out with these cars?
If you're not able to support an EV, you better be. Every OEM is working on a different different propulsion system in their vehicles. So what I mean by supporting an EV, have the ability to charge one, have all the necessary PPE to protect your technicians. I think people underestimate what that entails. Yeah. It's like 6 pairs of gloves. I mean, it's the ARC helmet, those kinds of things.
I feel like a hazmat suit when I have one in.
So start studying the EV stuff, because Ford made a statement for their shops to be EV ready. Because the announcement of the Mach-E coming. Every OEM has got an EV in their plans. We met with Mercedes last week. They've got their EQ platform that will be electric vehicle as well. So I would say the EV is currently here, but being somewhat overshadowed by ADAS stuff, because it's going to have ADAS too. But there's a lot of things about EV They're very different than they are the ICE vehicles.
It's a good point. So not just for EV, I think there's a misconception that a lot of times when we start thinking about scan tools, diagnostics, calibrations, that we're only looking for ADAS.
Right.
But there's a lot of other things
so much
on
stuff.
collision cars
Yeah.
that we're looking for as well. We're
Yeah.
not just trying to check for a couple little ADAS systems
Right.
and move the car down the road.
Yeah, you're going to have 5 gallons of coolant in an EV, to where you have to. There's no water, there's no engine, so there's no pulley, there's no water pump with a belt. It's an electric water pump. So how do you turn that on, right? So you're going to have a very detailed process when you do a course report, which we do every week, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you're changing a radiator on an EV. You're going to have to use a scan tool to actuate the pumps in the car to feed coolant into the vehicle. And so that's just one example. I mean, the truck we did yesterday had a power sliding running board that's scan tool supported. You know, you have autonomous rear doors coming on virtually every SUV nowadays. Those are scan tool supported in a lot of cases. So you're going to have those scan tool supported parts that install on the vehicle, and it could be for the drivetrain, for the ADAS, it could be for comfort features, those kinds of things. And you better know your way through a scan tool or have a remote provider that understands that stuff, so that we can send the commands for you when you're repairing the car.
Yeah, when I think about one, the liability,
Yep.
and I think about two, the I don't know what I don't know, it is comforting to me to have a third party do that for me, that I
Yep.
know that that's all.
This is all we do.
Yeah, you don't
This is
have
all
to.
we do.
You don't have to worry
Yeah.
about welding. You're not studying that.
Yeah.
You're not doing any of that because you're focused on this.
Yeah.
And to know that I can just have somebody that does that and can guide my physical tech to, if I just got to turn on some flashers and do some key cycles.
When an
Yeah.
OEM will also, with a new car, introduce a new scan tool that's only supported by that one car, right?
Yeah.
So when the Mazda 3 came out last year, the new MDAR system for Mazda was the scan tool that was supported. You know,
Wait, this didn't work
well,
either?
You know, you got to define work. Okay, so and you know you have the FJ-DRS.
Can I play
with
video games on here? Or
the
anything?
Ford scan tool supported 3 models, right? And then and so on. So those hardware changes, we have to keep up with those as well. And so that's something that we're constantly looking at.
It's a lot. Well,
There's a lot.
I think we guys have a lot of jaw dropping. We have a lot of people saying hi. By the
Hi.
way, a lot of people saying hi, Jake. So yeah, that's a good show. I'm
right.
now depressed.
We can't look at it like fear. We just look at it as an opportunity to get better, right?
It's
Right.
it's stuff that saves the customer. It's their health. It's their safety.
Yep.
If there's one thing that goes through the shop right now, this is the one I worry about. This
Yep.
is the one I don't have tolerance for. Right. So I mean, I have a lot of lack of tolerance for weld procedures that are incorrect and structural procedures, et cetera. But this literally is catastrophic braking to Miss Smith at 70 miles an hour
Right.
on the I-30 out here. And I think I'm a pretty good driver. You're an excellent driver. But Miss Smith she's Miss Smith, and this isn't something she should have to worry about or take a defensive driving school because we screwed her car up.
Yeah.
She
So-
expects it to work.
Yeah,
every
and what
time.
I'll say is that please do not feel that you are alone in this. If you've got questions, remember you're seeing cars that maybe my team hasn't seen yet. Please reach out to us. You know, we want to help you through them. Use your pick a tech, right?
Yeah.
Please reach out to us, and we'll reach out to people in the industry. And you know, we got people at engineering levels, at collision levels within the OEs. You know, you're our pulse out there, so please tell us.
Yeah, and that's a good segue. So just to end on that, that's what, you know, when Jason launched and you got here and we launched Pick a Tech, that's what it's designed to do. We know that you as the technician, you're in the stall, you're working with the car. You don't have the time to stop and go try to call OEs and engineers and scan tool companies to find your answers. And some of you don't know who to call. You just have a problem, you don't know who to call. And that's what Pick a Tech is designed for. You text in, Jason or Larry or somebody gets the text message, and if we can't answer it, then Jason's got a direct line to Jake, or he's got a direct line to, you know, Bob, who was
I
here
lean
earlier.
on Jake all the
Right,
time.
and-
If it's, especially if it's a Nissan, I'm like,
Right.
I rather than even look in the service information sometimes, I'll go, hey, Jake, where do I find this? And he's like, let's get on a call. We fire it up together. He walks me through, and then I get to look like the expert.
It can
when
be
I
You
get
look like
it.
a
it can be
hero.
buried a couple of times. It can be buried in there. It's hard to find.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but that's what that service is designed to do, and it's almost $40 a month.
Yeah.
$40 a month for a helpline that gets you access to OEs and engineers and experts. I think I'm
I am working on Jason's sock game, and I haven't been successful.
Look at the glitter
But I
on the
haven't,
Yeah,
I haven't
side.
been
glitter.
successful, but
Nice.
you know, hey, I'm trying to get
All right,
him up there.
all right,
you know?
Jason, what's your sock game?
Yeah, what do you got there, brother?
I got Snoopy today. I got
that's
I
cute.
got Snoopy. I got
Okay,
Joe Cool.
I got the National Park Series, so I don't know if you
Nice.
can see it. That's, you know, Sedona right there.
Well,
National
my
Park
work
Series.
is not done. I can see. So
Right?
there we go.
All right.
Good stuff.
Well, if you have any questions or anything that comes up that you didn't want to ask online or whatever, you can definitely send those to us directly. If we can't answer it, like we said, we're gonna kick those questions up to the expert that will take care of that. We are back at noon.
Yeah.
So we'll be back live noon Central Time with Capture the Keys, when we're going to talk about how your marketing really has to look these days. So here's a highlight. It's not about a website. It's not about SEO. It's not about Google keywords. There's a whole lot that have to do right now if you want to get cars through the door. And we have a proven system for that. And we're going to show that to you this afternoon on how you can market against some of these big DRPs, some of these big MSOs, and get cars into your shop. So we'll see you back here at noon.